March is Women's History Month, and this is day 23 of talking about strong women, women you need to know. Today, let's learn about Elizabeth Lena Draper Walker. Born in Richmond, Virginia, July the 15th, 1864. Her mother, Elizabeth Draper, and dad, Eccles Cuthbert, although no records were found that they were ever married, lived in Richmond, Virginia, and worked on the Van Loo's estate. Her mother had been a former slave and was now assistant cook on the estate, hired by Miss Elizabeth Van Loo, who was an abolitionist and philanthropist, and also a spy for the Union during the Civil War. Later, as a very young girl, as Maggie was a very young girl, her mother married a butler on the estate, and once he became employed as the head waiter at a hotel in town, they moved to a house that was close to the estate and also to the church where they attended. Like many churches at the time, it was the center of the community, and it provided both not only a place to go socially, but it was a place where everybody could go and get their needs met. Her stepdad passed away unexpectedly, and her mother went to work doing laundry, and while Maggie was going to school full-time at the newly formed Richmond Public Schools, she also helped her mom with the laundry. At 14 years old, Maggie joined an organization that was called the Independent Order of St. Luke. The short version of this organization is that it was founded as a burial society in 1867, but now had grown into something that was much more. An organization like the church, where you could go and get the help that you needed in the community, but it was now an organization that helped the elderly and helped the sick, helped promote humanitarian causes. It provided long-term economic support and social support in the post-slavery world. Things were new to a lot of people, and this organization strove to help people in the community find their way. It helped with education, health care, banking, and more. When Miss Maggie graduated school in 1883, she went on to teach. Not only did she teach while full-time, but she also sold insurance for an organization called the Women's Union, and that Women's Union also focused on the needs of people in the Richland community, particularly the African-American community. She also took night classes in accounting. She was a very busy woman. She met and married Mr. Walker in 1886, and although she was teaching full-time, selling insurance full-time, and taking classes at night, school policy said that women just couldn't do two things at once, and she could not be married and teach at the same time. Okay. Miss Maggie left the teaching position, and focused full-time now on her work at St. Luke's. She had many positions there, including being the delegate to the National Convention, and finally ended up as the top dog in the organization, as a female, as the Grand Secretary. And that was in 1899. When she took over the organization, she saved it basically from collapse. It had been ran by the previous male leadership, basically to its collapse. Financial mismanagement had led it to almost its destruction, and thankfully to her and her business savvy and her business sense, she took it and brought it back and made it a powerhouse of an organization. Her first year, she doubled the membership of the organization, and of course that meant helping a lot more people in her community. It was said of her that she basically was not going to put up with oppression, was not going to put up with racism or gender injustices. She sought to help her community in many ways. And in 1895, she also established a juvenile division of St. Luke's. So not only was she teaching adults who were now trying to find their way in a whole new world, but she was teaching children in her community how they could be self-sufficient and help themselves like nobody else had ever done. She served as the head of St. Luke's until her daughter took over and did the same until 1957 herself. My goodness. In 1902, she started a publication for the organization called the St. Luke Herald. And that was used much like social media is used today. It helped people in the community and members of St. Luke's know what was going on and where they could get help and things like that. Not only did she do that, but shortly after that, Miss Walker chartered a bank called the St. Luke Penny Savings Bank. In doing so, that made her the first female to ever open a bank. And it made her the first African American, period, to own a bank. I did find one little article that said there was one in 1888, but I found another article that said the bank was only managed by this gentleman's fraternal organization. They didn't really own the bank. She also served as president, making her the first female to do so, and making the first African American to do so, male or female, period. Goodness gracious. She also, in the building of her bank, she chose the Richmond, Virginia's first African-American architect to design the bank. And on her board, she also included several females, something else that was just not done in those days. She also served on the board when her bank merged with two larger banks to become a very large bank that served particularly the African community in Richmond, because it was African American owned. She served on that board for quite a while. Even later in life, she still kept doing all kinds of things that benefited other people. She became paralyzed, was in a wheelchair, and in doing so, she also paved the way for people with other disabilities and helped them be able to get out and work in the world just like anyone else. This was some kind of woman. Among just a few of the things that are also amazing about her, she was given an honorary master's from Virginia Union University in 1925. There are 2 schools in her name in the Richmond area. The St. Luke building, where she worked and helped her community in so many ways for so many years, is on the National Historical Register. And her office, thanks to her daughter understanding her contribution to the world, made sure and preserved that office just as she left it, because Miss Maggie worked until 70 years old and passed away still working on December the 15th, 1934, and her daughter made sure that that office is still preserved just as she left it to this day. My goodness, her home is also on the National Historical Register and is kept by the National Park Service. And the National Park Service says of Miss Walker, through her guidance of the Independent Order of St. Luke, Walker demonstrated that African American men and women could be leaders in business, politics, and education during a time when society insisted on the contrary. Yes, ma'am. She is one of Virginia's Women in History as of 2001. And at the Maggie L. Walker Memorial Plaza, a statue has been erected in her likeness on what would have been her birthday, July the 15th, 2017. And it is depicting her as she was known to everyone at the time, with her glasses pinned to her lapel and a checkbook in her hand. So today, on day 23 of Women's History Month, we celebrate the amazing Miss Maggie Lena Draper Walker. Miss Maggie Walker, we salute you.